Oh, what are you saying?
Right, let's go. No, that's fine.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talk Scottish Football, episode 26 of the podcast series, coming to you live on the 2nd of September, 9 months into the year, David. And
Stevie May.
Right, calm down right there, pal. Sure, you're all right to go. I used to like singing about Stevie May.
Ich bin einst Berliner.
I don't know. Like? I've not been anywhere really, but I just followed
what,
I don't know, mate. I'm back. Are you not happy to see me? You've not spoke to me since Saturday.
Yeah, you're going to be delighted because you're going to be able to edit this out because my fucking dad's phoning me 2 seconds. Fucking, we'll just start again. That was tragic, anyway.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talk Scottish Football, episode 26, the 1st of September. We've been going 9 months strong, and I'm joined beside my
the 2nd of September, but we'll leave it there.
No, 2nd of September. And
we're having a nightmare today.
We are having a nightmare. But hello, David Buick. Do you know what? It's actual madness since, January, since we started this podcast. I've been saying, I'm joined my good partner, David Buick, and you've not even bothered to correct me and saying your name wrong. And it was only like last week you went, you've been saying it wrong this whole time. Why do you not bother?
Not worth the hassle, is it, mate?
Oh, jeez. Anyway,
can we talk about some football? This is going to be an exciting episode. I cannot wait to get stuck in all this.
I know you can't, because you're creaming your knickers on the other side there. But it's been a big weekend that's passed. What are you pointing to the Germany badge for? Oh, right. I get you now. We'll get on to that.
Let's go.
We'll talk about the football in the main league first, the league that matters.
Okay, too far.
Anyway, Rangers are continuing on some fantastic form. So why don't we just start with him? Because I know there's Rangers fans who'll be chomping at the bit. I've heard that we spoke too much about Celtic last week. So I'll let you kick it off, David, because I know you don't mind bumming Rangers apart, and I know you don't mind.
Listen, somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to do it.
I mean, I'm not going to sit here, before I go any further, I'm not going to sit here and deny Rangers haven't started the season incredibly well, because they have. They've sat and broke their own record for clean sheets. They're on track to beat the Celtics' long-standing records of start the season with consecutive clean sheets. They're top of the league. They've headed into this break with tremendous momentum. Steven Gerrard's got things going. What's your opinion of it all? Are they going to keep it going?
Well, listen, in terms of the game at the weekend, for a 2-0 win away at Hamilton, you think it'd be a bit of a boring game, but there were so many little sub-stories for Rangers. So ultimately, the clean sheet thing you've mentioned, John McLaughlin, I don't think he's had a save to make, really, and at all this season. It's a testament to the Rangers rearguard. And they've been really good. You know, the full-backs have been outstanding. Tavernier Barisic, yet again, at the weekend, both brilliant. Kent, the focal point every week so far, he's been a standout man for them. So, yeah, listen, so far so good for Rangers. Ultimately, the big test will be the Old Firm game, which I think it's going to be a really tough one to predict, because I think form would suggest that Rangers would go into it favourites, but, I think Celtic will probably, that might actually suit Celtic for a change, not with some people expecting Rangers to really kick on. It might be good for Celtic. In terms of Rangers at the weekend, though, I mean, they were just brilliant again. Ryan Kent was fantastic again. Dow said it on Saturday, he shouted Kent for player of the season, and so far you can't really argue with that. Just everything seems to go through him. The way that they're set up, the fullbacks I mentioned as well are both so instrumental in how they play it. It frees up Kent and Hadji, to come central and link up. But did you watch the game?
I watched the opening sort of 20, 30 minutes.
Kemar Roof could have scored about fucking 5 goals if he wanted to. I mean,
do you know what the story seems to be for both teams? And as well as Rangers have been, and Celtic, of course, 2 games behind, but on the same record just now. We've gathered the same amount of points in the games they played to this point. Mm-hmm. But the problem for both Celtic and Rangers is that clinical part of the team in the final third. There's so many more goals we should be scoring. We've seen Ryan Christie take umpteen chances within a game and put them over the bar, put them wide. Olivier Cham, he loves to batter it into the rose head. And it's the same with Rangers. Rangers have had so many chances. You're talking about Ruth could have been scoring 5 goals in this game. You feel like, the boys at training, your John Kennedys and your Gary McAllisters and all the rest of it should be looking at this and going, right, we can score far more goals. And of course, if they're getting the result at the end of the day, I'm sure it's not going to bother them. But there is going to be a time, and it probably will be that Old Firm game, where these chances will come back to haunt them.
I think it'll come with sharpness, though. I think they'd be more concerned if they weren't creating chances. I think if they're not making chances, they'd be more concerned, because the goals will come. I would say that Rangers are probably creating chances a bit more fluidly than Celtic are just now. I think if you watch the first maybe, even after Celtic went up 1-0, it wasn't like they were creating loads of clear-cut chances. I think Rangers are a bit more fluid at the moment. Celtic, I think, will find the groove as they change formation. But yeah, Roof could have had a few at the weekend. Be interesting to see how Morelos is feeling having to watch that unused sub on Saturday. I don't know about you. I think Morelos will get back into the Rangers team. I still can't really see him leaving because I don't know who's going to pay the money Rangers will be after and what big club's really going to take a chance on him. So I think he'll get back into the team, if I'm honest. But it'll be interesting to see how he reacts to having to watch that at the weekend, knowing that, I mean, Morelos would have scored a few in that game. There's no doubt in my mind he'd have scored a few of them. So yeah, loads of interesting little sub-plots from that game. But
there's a couple of points there that I want to touch on that you brought up. Just two things that very, came in my head very quickly. And the first one is about the Rangers and making those chances. The thing that struck me about Rangers, the thing that frightens me going at the Old Firm game is the intensity that they're bringing just now. That is going to shake Celtic. Celtic have to be ready for that because we've not really... The only team who's brought that to us right now has been Ferencváros. Mm-hmm. They brought it. We struggled big time. You've seen the nerves. And then Julian had a touch of it against Kilmarnock as well. If Rangers bring that, we need to change our game. And hopefully that's what we'll see when we come back from the break and there's a change of system. But that intensity the Rangers have is right now working an absolute gem for them. The other thing about Morelos, I was always under the impression he would leave this summer. And I always said if they lose Morelos, they don't know what's going to hit them because I was a very big believer that Morelos was the best player at that club. Obviously, they've had players like Kent step up. They've now got Roof and Etienne in. So they've got good players there to step up to the plate and perhaps take over the reins that Morelos is leaving behind. But as time goes on, I'm now siding with you. I don't see him leaving. I think the whole of 2020 in general, I was going to just say the last kind of couple months with the way he's conducted himself, more particularly the whole year, came back from Dubai, barely scored. Mm-hmm. How many goals did they get since the return?
I've no idea. It wasn't many.
It wasn't a lot anyway. You got Morelos coming back from there, not scoring a lot, and the way that things seem to have been conducted over the past couple months, with Gerrard saying his attitude's been bad, his head's been turned, blah, blah, blah. I think that's going to put a lot of people off the idea of paying upwards of £10 million for Morelos.
Yeah, I don't think they'll let him go for anything less than 15, to be honest.
And I don't think they will. And the thing is, I'm not turning around on the podcast. Before anybody takes this out of content, I believe firmly that Morelos is, a £15 million player. He's showed that. He's got to be, that's the...
In terms of his ability as a footballer, he's worth more than that. But what hampers him is the discipline side.
But how many teams now, especially the last couple ones, are going to be willing to pay that? I think you're right in saying Morelos will stay at the club. But where does he come into that system? Itten, Roof, Morelos...
Yeah, I mean, for me, he's still the best striker. No, so if he does get some sort of fitness about him, then... it depends how he reacts to Saturday. I think Saturday's a big thing for him. An unused sub, you saw the photos of him, he didn't look happy. But how does he respond? Does he throw the toys at the pram? Or does he knuckle down and say, listen, I can get back in this team and start scoring again?
That's what I was going to say. Do you think that he'll be willing to take on that sort of side of himself and say, right, I'm going to work hard for this? Or do you think that's in his head?
It's really tough to gauge, I think. I think if he's going to stay, he won't want to sit on the bench.
Idea.
Yeah, if he does stay, there's no way he'll be happy sitting on the bench. He doesn't strike me as that type. He strikes me as the type that will want to play. So yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. I certainly think if I was Steven Gerrard, though, I'd be more worried about losing a Kent or a Barisic than I would be a Morelos at this point. Barisic especially was just unbelievable again at the weekend. That I think
it's definitely changed for me since the start of the window. Start of the window, I was like, it's about Morelos.
But everyone as well. I think Rangers fans are the same.
And the thing is with Rangers as well, there is depth. In terms of going forward, they've got good options, right? They've got Morelos now. They've got two other strikers. But the rest of the day, they've not got players that are going to come off the bench. And I still don't think they're at that level where they've got the players coming off the bench the likes of Celtic do. They still need to sign. So if they were to lose a Kane, if they were to lose a Barisic, they're doubling the trouble for themselves. Double trouble, you could say. Because they've got to sign a replacement for the first team. Then they've got to look at depth as well. I don't think the options they've got coming off for these guys are the best in the world. Jordan Jones has hit nowhere near the heights he should be for Rangers. Greg Stewart, who's he?
I'll tell you what though, Greg Stewart's always done, I think he's not had enough of a chance. He's done okay when he's come on.
What I'm saying is, who's he though? Because how many chances he actually had?
The issue is, we said it last year, is Gerrard brought in all these guys, but he doesn't seem to trust them. So like said, Jones and Stewart, they're Gerrard's signings and he doesn't trust them. So that's kind of telling. The one thing there, at least if you're going to have Etienne, Roof, Morelos, Kent, Hadji, Aribo, some of them are going to be on the bench. At least two of them will probably be on the bench every week. So there is going to be something. But I do kind of take your point. But yeah, it was another good win. At the moment, they don't really show much signs of slowing down, but the Old Firm will definitely be interesting. Other games on Saturday, we'll go to the one you watched because it was a bit of a stinker, really, wasn't it?
May as well get out of the way. I mean, do you know what? First things first, massive result for Gary Holt. Yeah. We said we never really got too much time to break down everything after the games had finished because obviously you had work, we had to wrap up the show very quickly, but Gary Holt will feel a massive sense of relief after that result. And it's disappointing for Ross County after the start they would have been fancying themselves, but you could see it during the whole game. Livy just went for it from the start. And the thing that struck me the most, and I say that umpteen times in that stream, even when they were 1-0 up with 10 minutes to go, it wasn't a park the bus job. It wasn't a protect this result. They kept going. They were the better team. And Ross County just looked drained. So Gary Holt got something ticking. It was a completely different side of Livingston I thought we seen in that game.
Red card certainly helped. Marco going off was a bit of a killer for County. But I think we all said, the 3 games we had, the 3 o'clock kickoffs, we all fancied the away team. It just didn't come to fruition. Massive results across the league for teams. So John Guthrie as well with a goal. I mean, he scored plenty last season. Big goal for him as well. He's on my fantasy team, which is fantastic. But a massive win for Livy. Not an awful lot more to say. County, won't be too disappointed considering their start if you look at it as a whole. But, there'll be room for improvement certainly for Stuart Kettlewell and his team. Gary
Holt would have been driving the buses with a big smile on his face.
He would have been. And David De Gea would not have been happy post-match. So speaking of away teams, I thought we were going to do well. I was watching St Johnstone St Mirren on our stream. I couldn't see a world in which St Mirren wouldn't get a result at the weekend, but I have to be honest with you, they were absolutely hopeless for 90 minutes. That is the worst I've seen them for a long time. And you could tell Jim Goodwin was fuming. He made changes unenforced in the first half to try and change things. Didn't work. Just nothing was working at all. They didn't have any chances really at all. But for St Johnstone, though, I mean, I picked up Callum Davidson a lot. It's been a bit of a talking point in that he's not maybe had the best of starts. But I have to say, I was really impressed with them. Craig Conway was really, really good. Kind of an experienced pro now. I think he's had a bit of a stick off the St Johnstone fans for not quite being what they thought he would be, but he was great on Saturday. And obviously the winning goal was by that man Stevie May, who's a bit of a I was going to say cult hero, but he's not even that, is he?
I wouldn't say cult hero. He's a good laugh. That's
he's still got that. It was a really good striker's goal. Low ball across the box, and he's at the front post.
Will he ever discover the form of the past?
No, I don't think so. But listen,
I think there's more chance of me scoring goals for St Johnstone.
He was the difference maker, though. He was the difference maker when he came off the bench. And listen, if he can keep doing that, then Callum Davidson will be very happy.
That's Callum Davidson, of course. I wasn't as optimistic as you with the appointment. I'll just be brutally honest. I wasn't. And I questioned you a couple of weeks ago and I says, is this a nightmare? Is this Callum Davidson showing that it's going to be a tougher gig than what first could have been? And no, he's turned it around. I think that their start hasn't now, a few more games in, it doesn't look too bad when you consider the changes that club has went through and the kind of the new era they find themselves in. I think Davidson is just now finding his footing. I think we'll see more results racked up. It's not an easy, we've got 30...
I mean, you talk about big shoes to fill. I mean, with the job Tommy Wright's done there.
We have 30 odd games. How many games left? 32, 33 games left to play. Yeah. This is far from over. It's as the famous phrase goes, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Yeah. So I'm sure that he'll be taking this marathon a step at a time, and he'll be looking to, perhaps get these results, even if by the slimmest of margins it has to be. Davidson will figure it out. I think there is signs of that. I was sceptical, I must admit, but now that I've seen more and now that I've, you were the one that watched the game at the weekend, of course, I'm hearing firsthand from you. But from the bits and bobs that you see, I do like what they're doing there. I like what he's got. I like the idea in place. And I do have faith that they will stay up despite me predicting them to have a honker.
And you've got to remember that St Johnstone, and even up till November time last year, were rock bottom. Everyone thought they were going to go down, and Tommy Wright turned it around, and they had an amazing second half of the season. They have got some good young players there as well. I like the boy McNamara. We talked about Ali McCann plenty of times. So, yeah, listen, a good result for them, especially when you consider how well St Mirren have been going. Again, it's a similar situation the game you watched, and the home teams needed the result, but perhaps nobody really expected them to get them. So, yeah, 2 massive results for them. And I think Dev got the game of the weekend. Well, the game of the 3 o'clocks anyway. I mean, typical the guest gets the best game.
That's twice in a row.
That's unbelievable. I don't think any of us could have predicted that result. Just amazing.
I mean, if you stuck a tenner in that, you'd been living life in LA. Just a bit too much, but it would have been a pretty decent return you'd be getting. I mean, 4-0. Come on, though. We're talking about the same Kelly who hadn't won a game up to that point.
Yeah.
4-0 against me. Here's me bumming up Mickey Bellin every week. I remember when I done my match preview for the Dundee, or the match review, I think it was, for the Dundee United game, somebody commented, like, how much is Mickey Mellon paying you to say these things? Because I've been such a massive fan. It was just a total and utter capitulation of everything that's happened so far this season for Dundee United. And that's, do you know what? I think that's a familiar story in this league. When you see teams who shouldn't be doing well, and they get a good run of games going, 1 week, it bang, falls apart.
But that was the same for all the 3 o'clock kickoffs.
Yeah. I mean, like utter capitulation, just complete collapse.
Just shows how tight it is.
I know. It's just, I don't know if it does come down to complacency. Maybe they did get a bit over their heads and perhaps they just overlooked Kilmarnock.
See, for me, I think at the moment, when you look at the league, I think the top 4 in the league are nailed on. I think Hibs Aberdeen will join the Old Firm as the top 4. I think beyond that, Motherwell you fancy to get back to some sort of form, but certainly with their start, to predict that they would comfortably in the top 6 would be, after their start, would be a bit wild, and losing Turnbull. So I think there's so many places up for grabs, so many teams at a similar level that will keep seeing results like this. But I remember when we got the team news from Rugby Park on Saturday, I knew straight away, I was like, wow, that's really good. So you've got Brophy and Kabamba up top. What a partnership, on paper especially. You look at their attributes, Brophy on the shoulder, Kabamba, big physical striker, flick-ons, bring the ball down. You've got 2 creative wingers in Burke and Kilty who'll create lots of the front 2. And you've got a proper workman like midfield. It was Dicker and Tishbola on Saturday, but Alan Power as well equally. So there's a really nice balance there with that midfield and attack. So I think you can see a little bit of a form start to come through for Kelly now. I think Alex Dyer's had a bit of a hard time of it. But yeah, I can see them hitting some form. And what about Rory McKenzie's goal? I mean, oh my God.
It's just, you can't stop seeing it.
And it's Puskás award-winning stuff.
If that was scored, then at any top league in Europe, that would be it, goal of the season. But no, I'll get overlooked because it's here. Shame on the
people coming up with Messi's favourite goal. People are going, "Oh, what's your favourite Messi goal?" And it's one that's exactly the same. And it was just thousands of retweets, but you don't get good football on plastic pitches, you see. No.
But shame on the person who popularised the one up top system. Teams are showing 2 up fronts the way to go.
Absolutely.
It is. And I've always been a fan of it. Call me a Sam Allardyce shagger all you like. I like the 2 up front. I'll take
it. If you've got a certain level of player, like a quality player, like I remember when Spain did it, they were kind of the first team that played no striker. I think they did it at the Euros in 2012. They played like David Silva or Fabregas as their striker. I mean, you've got that quality of player who can move around and do things, fine. But when you don't have that, I think playing with 2 up front, especially in Scotland,
with Ryan Christie up front. Ryan Christie, Cesc Fabregas, bit of a difference there, isn't there?
But I mean, Brophy and Kabamba, by all accounts, did really well. Kabamba with another 2 goals, Brophy on the score sheet. Alex Dyer will be delighted. So great result for them.
Good on.
Couple of games on a Sunday. We'll go to Celtic Park because that was the first Sunday game.
Oh.
Speaking of 2 up top, let me give you my quick spiel on what I thought about Celtic on Saturday before you give your expert analysis.
Before I go anywhere, it's just I remember talking to you throughout the game, and in the first half more particular, you were the one that mailed me at first. Both of us. What was their first half reactions like? Jesus, hopeless. God Almighty!
And this is the thing. They got a tad lucky in the way they went in front because it was the one time in that first half where Motherwell had overexposed going forward and left them space. So one time Celtic were able to counter-attack, and that's when they got their goal. But this is what I'm saying about Rangers. They're creating great quality chances. Celtic weren't doing that for the first half, at least. First 50, 60 minutes, they weren't doing that. I've seen so many Celtic fans on Twitter this week giving Klimala dog's abuse for missing that chance. Klimala changed the game for Celtic. He absolutely changed that game for them. Not in terms of his goal scoring, because yes, he's got to score that chance. Having a striker who's willing to run in behind, run the channels, it stretches the game. It gives McGregor and Christie more space, takes the defence into places they don't want to be in. And even you look at Ayeti's goal, that's down to Klimala pulling away and taking the defender away, that Ayeti gets that space. And Celtic go 2 up top with the last, half hour, and they're just a different team. Completely different team. They look dominant, they were creating chances. They looked like the Celtic that were flying at the tail end of last year into this year. So, listen, they've got to go 2 up top. They looked brilliantly with the 2 up top. But yeah, it did take a long time for them to really find their groove on Sunday, but they got there in the end.
Are you done something now?
What?
I said, are you done something? Sounded like a massive Celtic fan there. You said,
sorry, I just
took my pedestal.
Well, listen, they were on the counter to that is they were pretty honking in the first half. I thought dreadful, for large parts. And the worst thing was that you've got Forrest and Elyounoussi who both like to come into feet and take the ball and go in field. Everyone talked about team selection, and we'd said it. They were going to go the same team. We said it. We both said it. What amazed me was not that he didn't start a striker, was that he didn't start Frimpong. I could not understand that at all. So you've got Forrest who comes in, but El Hamed's not getting high and wide enough to cause any real threat. Do you know what I mean? Like, if he bombs on, fair enough, Forrest can come inside. They were so narrow and they didn't create nothing in the first half, really, until they got that counter-attack. But, yeah, second half, much better.
You must admit, you love it, though. You love it when Celtic struggle, because you know I get to come on this show and look like an absolute moron. And you know what that gets. That gets numbers going up. You love it. I know you love it.
Listen, we spoke about the European result. I was fuming with Celtic's European result because it's just nonsense for a team of that quality in Scotland to do that. So I knew they would find a solution, and there's no way that he's not going to go 3-5-2 now. I wouldn't even be surprised if he saw it in the next game, to be honest.
We've got to, talk about one thing in particular, because I don't know if we're going to come back to later on the show, so let's get it out of the way very quickly. You've basically said everything I need to say about the game. You've got it spot on. Well done.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
You're a top man. But second half, when we had those two up front, it just changed the game altogether. Yeah. It was fantastic. And what you said as well, but Kamala wasn't just the two up front. Kamala did come on and change the whole, the whole tone of the game. But two up front, great. The signing of Shane Duffy. What a piece of business we have managed to pull off there. Absolutely buzzing. It's exactly what I think we've been looking for since the departure of Bobo Baldi. Perhaps maybe a wee bit. We'll talk. Maybe Stevie McManus.
Virgil van Dijk, maybe. I don't know. He was all right.
He was no bad eye. But no, what a player we have got here. Well, I hope so. I don't want to get this as a thing, right? On paper, very quick, because I don't want to make it the Celtic show, right? I don't want to make it a Celtic TV spin-off. But Shane Duffy, right, coming in alongside 5 million Ageti, 5 million Barkas, David Turnbull, 2.5 million, and keeping, I said keep million, I said, didn't I? Those five, on paper, that is the best transfer window I think we've had, perhaps, for the last 10 years.
Yeah,
I'd go as far as to say that. I don't remember a transfer window where we have on paper made signings like that. Now, of course, we have had great signings. Moussa Dembele came in, Scott Sinclair came in, amazing. In the same season, you had honkers sign like a Buick and that was absolutely stinking. Conjurton's finest came along after that. The year we signed in Cham, fantastic signing, incredible signing. We bring in Jack Hendry. We bring, there's been absolute garbage has came in year after year. Massive change since Conjurton's left the club, and massive change since Lennon's came back into the club. I think the recruitment has stepped up. And yes, I'm not saying Lennon's signings have been immaculate, because he's made a couple of questionable ones as well. But I'm very pleased with this summer transfer window, and I'm very, very excited to see Big Duffy in the squad. What's your thoughts on Duffy? Because you're not a Celtic fan, right? I feel like I don't want this Duffy signing to become one of those things Celtic fans are not like. I can see you smiling. That gives me a bad hope. But I don't want Duffy to be, he's a big Irishman. We all want a big Irishman in the team, and he comes in and we're all just expecting.
I think there's a little bit. There's an element of that, but
definitely there is fans who are completely blinded by that, and they've probably never seen him play in his life.
It's the same for the James McCarthy rumours every single transfer window. I mean, it's going to happen.
Well, Duffy, you're right. James McCarthy's a Glasgow boy.
He is, yes, but he's a Glasgow boy who played for Ireland instead of Scotland. That just, the staunch Celtic fans, that's amazing. Anyway, I completely agree. Duffy is exactly the type of player Celtic needed. Exactly what they needed. I mean, Julian and I are really good at some things, but they're also very bad at others. And Duffy will complement them in the fact that Duffy's not a ball playing centre half. He's not going to look to, ping the passes left, right, and centre like Julian and I can. But I tell you what he will do. He won't get bullied by big strikers. It's not going to happen. And in terms of we are going to go to a 3-5-2, you want a nice balance where you've got a rock in the middle, a proper rock solid centre half, a leader, a talker, and then you've got two who can go and play. So yeah, it's exactly what they needed. I think that some of the stuff with Duffy is that Celtic fans are absolutely delighted this deal has been done and all the rest of it. But if this deal wasn't done, that would have been a disaster. They absolutely needed to get it done. I don't see it as a marquee signing as such. I see it as a necessary piece of the puzzle rather than a big marquee signing, which is the reaction seems to suggest some people think it is. I still think they'll probably do one or two other bits of business before October, if I'm honest.
Peter Law's got the book out this year, eh?
Yeah, but the pressure is on in terms of especially how well Rangers are doing. And it might be a bit of a blessing in disguise for Lennon how well Rangers have started that they are going to get this backing. But yeah, a really good signing. I think he will make a difference.
What do you think Peter Law's also be like come the end of the season if it's neck and neck after spending this?
Stevie me. He'll be, Darby Desmond will be even worse, I think.
Right enough.
I'd imagine so.
Oh, big Rod Stewart, eh?
Aye, yeah.
He'll come on the pitch at half time, soon, so
Oh,
sure I'm sure he'll get a warm welcome nowadays.
Don't put him in hospitality before that.
Right,
final game of the weekend.
One game,
wow. Did you watch this? Hibs Aberdeen?
I got absolutely no chance to watch it. I obviously got to see the highlights, but that was it. That was all I got to see. So you may as well take it away, because I was out on, David, I must admit to you, son, I was probably about 4 pints deep at the time. So
nice for some. So did you hear Derek McInnes' post-match on Ross McCrory? I've never heard a manager speak so highly of a player. He just absolutely
adores
adores him. And to be fair, there's no wonder why. Since Aberdeen's the Aberdeen 8, since that whole fiasco, Aberdeen have been brilliant in terms of the results they've picked up. Absolutely brilliant. We all tipped Hibs for third. See, after the last couple of weeks, though, I'm thinking it's hard to bet against Aberdeen, because they've been there and done it. But see, what I like about Aberdeen this season, so far from what I've seen, the boy Ryan Hedges, I think he's a really, really, really good player. And the reason I like him is he's not a Derek McInnes type, in that he's perhaps not that great without the ball as the likes of maybe a McGinn, a Hayes are, but he's a flair player. He gets the ball, he wants to make things happen, shots from distance. Scott Wright as well is exactly the same. So they've got that flair at the top end of the pitch, which they perhaps haven't had, in recent years. And some Aberdeen fans have been critical that McInnes doesn't change his style, he doesn't be more expansive, but they've looked that way, especially on Saturday as well. To go to Easter Road, to get the win, Ross McCrory, what an addition. What an addition. I certainly thought he still could have done a job in that Rangers squad. I think a few Rangers fans are of the same opinion. And he's done really, really well. You put him in there with Lewis Ferguson, you've got two of the best young midfielders in Scotland, really. And they're doing really, really well. So, it was a penalty. Did you see the penalty incident?
I did not. No, I know I seen the highlights, but I see that mean the goal.
It's an absolute clanger. Martin Boyle's just got to clear the ball, and he's a proper attacking player in his own box, and have a clue what's with him. Kicks. I think it's Ferguson. I think it was Watkins actually kicked the penalty. Ferguson tucked it away, but massive result. Big credit's got to go to McInnes and that team, because after everything, it's probably been a good thing for them in terms of unity. They've got to stick together now, because the whole country was ranting and raving
talk about blessings in disguise, right?
Yeah,
it's not a good one. It's not exactly probably the most clever thing to say, but that's the blessing in disguise. That whole situation, I think that is the very telling moment was that team talk against St Johnstone. McInnes with them all in the park, round the circle. You could see it in McInnes' eyes, because not only was the squad absolutely bombarded by the whole country, by the government itself, by the ASF, by everything. McInnes has been bombarded for the last 3 years. He's never been able to catch a break. This moment is bigger than ever for Aberdeen, and now they've got to kick on, and they have been kicking on. And do you know what? Who cares if they're doing it narrowly? Who cares if they're doing it with one goal? Who cares if they're doing it by a penalty? By the end of the 90 minutes, wherever the 3 points goes, that's all that McInnes will care about right now, because that's what's going to keep his team going for third place, and ultimately, it's going to what keeps him in a job. Yeah, and listen, we talk about the biggest argument when people say about Celtic winning the league this year is that they've got that experience, they've been there and done it. It's the same with Aberdeen in that battle for third. In terms of being best of the rest, they've been there and done it, for the last 8 years. 8 years. They're thereabouts. They've been up in that battle. They've done it more times than not. So, yeah, listen, they deserve all the credit they get. A big, big win at the weekend, and I can see good things continue to happen for Aberdeen. I can see it was a good weekend, interesting weekend, some interesting results, but we're international duty this weekend. The first bit of international news. I want to segue this. I want to segue it. So I want to go international and then international. So that's my plan. Are you okay with that? So you want to go international? Right. Well, there was a bit of international news at the start of the week, and that was Ollie McBurney. Okay. So I'm looking at the script and I see what you want to do, but there's something that we just completely missed out that we should touch on very briefly. Right, let's just pretend we haven't missed it out. The incredible results for Motherwell and Aberdeen in Europe. Well, we covered that on stream on Saturday, but yeah, I mean, absolutely brilliant results. The draw, we didn't cover the draw, I suppose. That was... Well, do you know what? I'll tell you what, David. I know absolutely nothing about the squad or the team that Celtic are playing, so there's not even a point in asking me. Do you think I study the insides of Riga? Do you think I know the interesting draw was Rangers and Lincoln Red Imps. I'm telling you, 100% win ratio on that park against Scottish teams. They're going to keep it up. I tell you what, see if it was a two-legged tie, you'd have absolutely no worries that Rangers would snort them. But there's going to be that little seed in the fact that it's a one-legged thing. There'll be a little seed of doubt, I think. Right, see, I always want to see Scotland have a good account of themselves in Europe, right? I do. But, oh my God, I'll be crossing my fingers, my toes, my legs and my eyes for Lincoln Redhams to beat Rangers. I genuinely will be. Because do you know the abuse we took, David? Do you know the abuse we took when they beat us back in 2016?
That part was awful.
Granted, we kicked on to absolutely batter Rangers on about 4 different occasions.
And everyone else domestically that season.
And an invincible season. So, you know what, I'm not too bothered, but it was still quite a pain at the time.
Yeah, I think there'll be that little seed of doubt that Rangers should do fine. But yeah, the results were really good last week. They made up for the disaster Celtic put in the night before. So. Did
you watch the 2016 tie for Celtic Lincoln?
Yeah, I did watch it. Yeah.
Do you remember the airport right beside the pitch?
Yeah.
That's a good laugh.
It's just awful, absolutely awful.
The Rock of Gibraltar's awful nice, isn't it?
But it's nothing on Dumbarton though. Dumbarton is just beautiful.
Dumbarton, you know.
If you're going to go to the Rock, you go to Dumbarton, no?
No, if you go to the Rock, you got St. Rocks.
So the first bit of news at the start of the week, Ollie McBurney. Now,
oh God,
right. So I'm going to let you kick off for this because I think we might have differing viewpoints on this.
I don't get it. Right, he's not fit to play for Scotland. Apparently, he's not fit to play for Scotland. Yeah. Why was he named in the Sheffield United squad?
Yeah, he played 45 minutes for Sheffield United.
So he can play 45 minutes for Sheffield United in a friendly, but he can't play 45 minutes for Scotland.
So the intensity levels and the everything.
I know, right? Okay, I know what point you're going to come on to here.
But I think if it wasn't Ollie McBurney, we would all not be crucifying.
That is
nonsense. And it sounded like it wasn't a McBurney decision; it was a managerial decision by both of them.
Okay, right. But on the other side of things, right? Do you remember a couple of years back? I can't remember what fixtures it was for Scotland. I honestly couldn't tell you. Callum McGregor dropped 2. Kieran Tierney dropped 2. There was a couple of Celtic players there that just said, "No, I'm not going." Right? And the Rangers fans were getting it stinking. And this is because I feel like there's this point of view because McBurney's a Rangers fan, automatically the Celtic fans jump his back. Look, it works on both sides. But when they dropped out the squad, it was a crime. Don't let him back in, all the rest of it. McBurney he's made it publicly known he doesn't want to play for Scotland in the past. Now he's dropping out when we've got 2 big games. Look, I'd rather him be here. Granted, I would much rather be here for the games that matter when it comes to the playoffs against Israel, right? And then perhaps if we get through, then Serbia or Norway. But I don't know. What's your opinion then? Let me know, because
my main thing ultimately is if Steve Clarke is happy enough with the situation, then I'm happy enough with it. Like I trust Steve Clarke enough as Scotland boss that if he thinks everything's fine, if he trusts, and it sounded to me like it was Chris Wilder that. I think a lot of people have this thing that players just decide they're not going, but that's not the case. It's the clubs that will make the decision.
The quote goes, I spoke to Chris Wilder at the end of last week and he told me Ollie hadn't been training because he had a laceration is it laceration?
Yeah.
A laceration in his foot that had become infected and he wouldn't be fit enough to play at international level. Right, okay, fair enough. Sounds like a decent enough reason, but do you know sometimes feel like you just have to read between those lines? And I mean that very... look at the lines there, between the lines. Do you know think that's what McBurney's getting us?
Here's the thing is with Chris Wilder is that by all accounts he's one of the most stand-up managers in that league down there. So you look at the way people talk about him, like the clubs that loan him players, they always rave about him and all the rest of it. Listen, if that's his first 45 minutes of pre-season, you've got to also remember, Ollie McBurney's in his off-season just now, they're not playing competitive football. So there's that to take into the factor as well. After the fact, there's his first 45 minutes after an injury, to then play a big game for Scotland. No, I mean, I just don't. Ultimately, what it does come down to as well is that club does come before country for everyone, for the players, for the staff and everything. So if Wilder can ease him back in and get him fit at club for the start of the season, he will do that. And listen, I don't think you can blame him either.
I must admit, when I first gave my point across, I'm giving far more a bigger impression of that I care. I don't really. I honestly couldn't give a toss about McBurney being in and out the squad.
I mean, for me, I disagree. I have a different viewpoint in that. I think it's a big shame that he's not in the squad because I think this was a really good chance to experiment ahead of the playoff, and now he will not be in contention for that playoff.
It's a good chance to experiment, but I couldn't give a toss. I must admit, David, honestly, I sound like a care farmer. I sound as if I'm coming across like I'm going to be marching down to Sheffield tomorrow with torches and, spears. No, not going to happen. I would like him to be in the squad. I will admit, I would like him to be there. But for me, it's not life or death that we're missing him out. The annoying thing is we are so, we're so scarce in that area of the park. You know, there's not a lot of forward.
I mean, it's going to be. It sounds like it's going to be Lyndon Dykes is positioned to lose now. I mean, you'd imagine he'll start on Friday night. There's no way now. I think maybe Barney would have been the guy to start in that playoff game against Israel if he'd played these two games. I don't think there's any doubt about that. When you look at Clark's press conference, he talked so highly of him. Now it's Lyndon Dykes' shirt to lose for me.
I'll tell you what, I will not be shocked if Ollie Buck starts up top for Scotland. I will not be shocked.
I actually kind of agree with you. I had this really horrible thought. Really horrible thought yesterday that he might do it. But I would be disgusted if he did do it.
Mate, I wouldn't be shocked in the slightest. Why
do people keep persisting with Ollie Burke? Why do they keep persisting with him?
Mate, I'm not persistent.
How bad do you have to be consistently? He's absolutely hopeless. Like he's just not any good. He's not an international footballer. And you know what's going to annoy me even more is he'll come off the bench and score against Israel. I can just see it. But he's just not good enough to be the main man for Scotland up front. If he's not good enough to play for all the teams he's been at consistently, then it just does my head in.
Hey David,
he's got all the physical attributes in the world to be the best striker going, and he did nothing technically. Look, how strong is he? How quick is he? How tall is he? He's got everything, but he just doesn't have any technical ability. So
I tell you what, you've just ruined the chance of a future podcast guest right there. No chance of a big birthday coming on there.
I just don't get it, and I've got a terrible feeling that he might be involved. But surely, I mean, I wouldn't even mind seeing if he does go 3-5-2 still, playing Christie just off Dykes. I wouldn't mind seeing that, if I'm honest. You know, I think Dykes could be a good foil for Christie, so I don't know. I'm interested to see what he does. I just hope Ollie Burke's not involved. I really do.
Do you want a wee game of who'd you rather?
Hi, hit me.
Chris or Ollie?
Who's Chris? What do you mean? Oh, right, Chris. Okay, right. Chris Burke, absolutely, mate. Chris Burke's form deserves to be in the head. Ollie McBurney, surely. Ollie Burke.
Ollie Burke.
There's too many Ollies and Chris's and Burkes in this carry on. So that's that. So hey ho, we'll see.
Well, he's out the squad, and that's the news. That's the big news. So do you know what? I am now going to give you permission, David Buick, to once in your life go on the biggest rant, the biggest whatever, the biggest. Not rant. The biggest. You know, just sit back, enjoy, ladies and gentlemen, as David Buick, Dunfermline.
Hey, let's just settle down here. Let's just calm down. So, big news. I mean, the most mental thing about all this stuff is, for those who haven't seen, there's a sort of takeover thing kind of in progress in Dunfermline. This German group of investors have come in. By all accounts, before coronavirus, were ready to buy the club in March. 75% of the club, they were going to buy it in March before coronavirus hit, which was news to me. I had no clue about it at all. You know, I usually kind of have some sort of idea of what's going on. I kind of pick things up. Nothing. Didn't have a clue what was going on. And then yesterday, was it yesterday? Yesterday the news broke that this German investment group have come forward and bought an initial 30% of Dunfermline for an investment fee, which I'm hearing is about 600 in initially for the 30%. That's going to raise to about 75.1% if they choose to exercise that option. So there's a takeover in prospect Dunfermline. It's mad that it's just come out of the blue. Normally these things, they're like the news breaks and we hear for ages about all the.
At least we hear before you go any further. At least there's nothing like Newcastle's,
Like Newcastle, we had it. There was similar stuff in the recent years with Hearts, with Dundee. There's always so much talk about these potential new owners. So what I'm really excited about is that they weren't the only ones who were wanting to come in. Like there was a number of different investment groups who wanted to come in and put money in the club for a share of the club. And the Dunfermline board at the moment had the chance to basically handpick the ones that they've gone for. What I'm really excited is, if you look at Germany lead the way in football in every aspect at the moment. Yep. Everything from fan culture to youth academies to the top level, the Champions League internationals. They're just leading the way. By all accounts, the reason they picked Dunfermline is they've seen it as a club of potential. A big town, a community club. All the rest of it. So what are you up to?
I'm joking. I was.
No, yeah. I mean, by all accounts, these guys have got the right ideas. They're coming in for the right reasons. So I was totally reassured because Derek Ray put a tweet out saying that he was convinced they were coming in for the right reasons. That totally reassured me, because if Derek thinks that, then that's just
what Derek thinks is right.
So the guy
would you rather? It's a daft question, a very daft question, but I thought I'd throw it in there for the comedy aspect alone. Would you rather these German guys, or would you rather Vladimir Romanov?
What? That's so bizarre.
Vladimir Romanov, eh?
Well, listen, I think the thing with Vladimir Romanov is he got the checkbook out. It doesn't sound like these German guys are going to just be emptying the bank. That's not really what they're here for.
It's more of a project than anything.
It's a project, which is why I'm really excited about it. I mean, they're already talking about getting a youth academy, and they go, getting a training ground. We don't have a training ground. We're using all sorts of different. No, at the moment we're training at Alloa's stadium.
Right.
They're in that with them because it's a plastic pitch. That's where we're training. So training ground to be built. It sounds like a youth academy. I'm excited for the fan experience thing at East End as well. I mean, we've had so much talks in recent years. There's a guy, Jason, who does lots of stuff for the fans. He's talked about safe standing, put it to the board. They like it, but the money's not been there. Hopefully these guys will come in. That could be a thing that'll be happening. But ultimately, Dunfermline needs to come back in the Premiership. I mean, I feel like I'm shouting to an empty room sometimes, and especially a lot of people that probably watch this show. Even for me, like, Dunfermline consistently in the Premiership hasn't been a thing since I was like, 6, 7, 8. Like, since then, we've had one spell in the Premiership.
Came up once, actually, yeah.
But you look at, in terms of like, you look at what Motherwell are doing. For me, there should be no reason why Dunfermline can't achieve that in terms of size of club, facilities, support, stadium, history, everything. We've got all the potential, so it's great to see these guys have recognised that, and we need to get back into the Premiership. It just has to happen. Whether it happens this year, I've got not so quiet confidence it will happen this year, but listen, by all accounts, it's really exciting times. I can't wait. I just can't wait to get back down, and hopefully good things will start happening soon.
I imagine it was like the Vincent Tano ownership of Cardiff. I came in, changed the colour of the kits, changed the badge, got rid of everything.
Oh, but that's the thing. I saw this thing last night. It was this picture, like this world-class stadium. It's like East End will either be this or like a block of flats in about 10 years. So we'll see. But no, by all accounts,
would you love them? What would you do if they did come forward and say, "Oh, by the way, we're leaving East End"?
Well, the part of the deal is that when they have the option to buy the increased shares, take up 75%, they get the option to buy East End. So like East End is a separate company that own that. It's not Dunfermline.
Okay.
So they have the option to buy that. So listen, there's been plenty of talk about potential for a new stadium. I'd hate it. I'd absolutely hate it. I mean, could you imagine? Like, I feel for all these clubs that have had to go through it. Like, I mean, like look at St Mirren. St Mirren are finally starting to get a bit of an atmosphere now, but it's been soulless for so long.
That's
a decade. St Johnston's hopeless. Like, it's horrible. Right. It's soulless. It's too big for what they need. It's just, granted, East End is too big for what we need, but there's still that sort of. It is. It's just a harsh reality. Hopefully that will change. But yeah, listen, exciting times. I don't want to go too much on about it, but
I wish you the best, because do you know what? I'm looking forward to the day I can shout abuse from a season ticket seat to you. I mean, granted, I had that opportunity a year ago, but I never knew you at the time.
Yeah. Listen, you wouldn't have been shouting nothing that day, let's be honest.
No, I was not. I think it was silent all game. I think it was quiet. Anyway, Dunfermline, perhaps the new Manchester City. We've only got time to wait and see.
Announced Messi.
Well, that photo, that was creepy. Did you see it?
Yeah, it was good. A good Photoshop.
Good Photoshop. Anyway, we'll move on. The final thing to talk about in the podcast before we move on to the questions, we'll go through it very quickly. Scotland, Israel preview. What we're thinking heading in, Davidson?
So I'm really excited in that. I'm just weirdly excited to see Scotland play. I think, where we're a month away from the biggest game Scotland have had since, a long time. Probably. You could argue it's the biggest game in our lifetime for Scotland.
Oh, no, it is. I think so. I don't. The closest I remembered was when Strachan was in charge. And we
had the one to Slovenia away. That was the big one.
But this feels
bigger though.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And I don't know if it's just because now I'm far more interested.
Maybe.
That perhaps is the case. But back then, I was still choking to see me Strachan take us somewhere.
But I've always been massive in the national team. I always loved the national team. It does feel bigger.
I think the thing is, for me, as I have bought so much into this belief of the new era under Stevie Clark, the minute he was appointed manager, I have never felt so optimistic as a Scotland.
Yeah, I'm the same.
So I think it's purely down to that. And but a month before then, we need to gather a wee bit of momentum now. We need to figure out what we're going to do. Because by all accounts, as we spoke about when the squad was revealed last week, it looks as though there could be a change of system for Scotland. So
maybe not now, McBurney's
maybe not now.
What I'll be interested to see is, you would imagine he would want to get. See, I've got two thought processes in this. We talked about the squad came out 3-5-2, all the rest of it. Towards the end of the last sort of internationals we had, the back four was pretty settled in that it was Palmer, Gallagher, McKenna and Robertson. And kept a couple of clean sheets. They looked pretty solid. Part of me thinks he might keep that. What I would like to see is if he does go, so as we play Friday, Monday, so there's not much of a space in between, whether he tries and goes, we'll try and play as close to the same team as possible, so that's the team that plays against Israel, or whether he goes, right, we want to get everyone minutes so that he can prove himself this game. I think there's two ways you can approach it. So there's so much unknown with what will happen. The team use thing will be just as interesting, I think, as the game, because I think it will give us a good indication of where his head at in terms of the squad is. But I think there's so much to be optimistic about. You know, in terms of the squad, yes, up front is an absolute head sore. It's a nightmare. But listen, when was the last time Scotland had three proper top quality players? Three or let's say four actually. Top quality players down in the English Premiership who were doing really well. You look at McTominay, McGinn, Robertson, Tierney. You could even say Ryan Fraser before he left Bournemouth, who were playing at that higher level, doing really, really well week in, week out. We haven't had that for a long time. They're five really good players. Fraser obviously not in this squad. You look at McGregor, Christie, Ryan Jackal playing really well for club. You know, I think there's a lot to be positive about, and I'm just looking forward to see how we do.
I'll leave it there for you because I basically would just be echoing everything you say. Hopefully the Celtic boys shop do well. Just to kind of bring up, you know, I always feel there is, and you've spoke about it a lot, that disappointment that sometimes the Celtic players don't translate their form over to national team. So I'm hoping that they do. But
we saw that under Strachan though, when Strachan finally got the mix right, when he got Griffiths in the team. Yep. We finally got that thing right there. So there is an argument to play all the Celtic boys, but you know, when they're not in the best of form. Like I think it would be a bit strange if Forrest played, considering he's not really been in great form. Would it surprise me if he did? Probably not, because I literally have no idea what Clark's going to do. So, yeah, that's just pretty much that. Should be one of the questions, because there's a lot of them to cover. What we've already covered.
Let's bridge over to what the fans are saying. We forgot to do it last week. We've got you involved this week. Every week, make sure and look out for David's post on the social medias. Twitter at TSF Podcast 1 and Instagram at Talk Scottish Football. Podcast. I knew it had podcast in it. I bloody knew it. It was flawless as well there. That was lovely. I sounded like Gordon Duncan.
Right, so the number one account that replied to this, guess which account replied to this the most?
Is this on Twitter?
Yeah.
TSF is class?
Absolutely. There's the boy. Back with a bang. So he's fired in loads. A lot of them we've already covered, but there's an interesting one here. Is there a small chance Hibs could win a cup this season? Or possibly challenge the Old Firm? They're not going to challenge the Old Firm, but could they win a cup? Yeah, they absolutely could win a cup.
I suppose they could still win the Scottish Cup of last season. There's
great shout.
There's potential for that. Yeah, look, to be honest, it's hard to tell right now because we don't even know how the cups are going to be structured moving into the next season's ones, because the League Cup should now be underway, as we know. We should have had that, the first round of that played and the second round of that played. It's not. There's still a long way till those competitions now begin, and we don't know if Hibs' form will still remain the same by the time those competitions do begin. I think there's always going to be a chance there because undoubtedly Jack Ross has got them playing fantastic stuff. But I don't know. I still feel like there's a chance of Celtic going on and winning a quintuple treble, for God's sake. So, and I think there's a big hunger at Rangers as well for them to finally win silverware, be it not the league title.
That would be absolutely awestruck if Rangers didn't win a bit of silverware this season.
If Rangers don't win silverware, I'd be quite stunned as well. I think this is finally the year where they've really got. They were close last year, of course. The Betfred Cup, we robbed them in the final. It just comes down to the nerve on the day, and the story for Rangers has been Hampden is an absolute nightmare. They've not liked it. They've been hopeless at Hampden since they went down. So I don't know. It's a bit early to say. I think they could, by all accounts, in the opening few weeks of the season, yes, they could win a cup. Yeah,
they absolutely could do. He also asked about 3-5-2. We've kind of covered that with both in unanimous agreement that Celtic need to go 3-5-2.
Yep.
I watched your video this morning before I came on here. For those who haven't seen it, Ryan's kind of... I'll probably answer this question because we can direct into your video for how this question is.
Go and watch my video.
How does... Your video was on basically Celtic's best 11 just now.
Yeah, that's right.
The question is, how does El Younousi fit into Celtic's best 11? I'm going to say that I'm not entirely sure that he does, because I think it doesn't. 3-5-2 doesn't suit him, and yet he's not been brought in to be a substitute. Yes, he's been there so far. It's not what he's been brought in for. And when you've got Turnbull, Christie, McGregor, you're not going to play El Younousi as a 10. He's not suited to play a wing back role. Listen, there will be plenty of rotations throughout the season. He will play plenty of games. We saw it a lot last season where in Europe they played 4-3-2-1. I think they'll probably still do something similar. Yeah, so that's where Younousi might get a lot of his games. So yeah,
you've got to remember as well, there is no chance. So my team had all on the bench. I had Christie, Scott Brown, El Younousi, Griffiths wasn't even there, Kamara wasn't there. those 5 players right away off the bat. I mean, we don't know about Griffiths yet. We have no clue. But the rest of them, there's no way
they're all going to get plenty of minutes.
They're not going to get minutes. It's no as if our 11s that we're saying are going to be week in, week out the team. So we'll plenty of rotation.
So a really good question here from Shadows of Weevil. That's a really good name.
Shadows of Weevil. That's a different
should we be calling up more young players like Turnbull instead of like Kenny McLean, because all the other countries are doing similar, trying to get youth involved at a senior level? Yes, we should. We absolutely should be doing that. Right, you look at Wales. Wales is the perfect example here.
Hold on. Inside voices.
Sorry, mate. After the Ollie Burke rant, we're a bit late for that.
Right enough.
Yes, we should be doing that. You look at Wales. Ethan Ampadu, Ben Woodburn, Nico Williams is in the team. Get them in, man. Get them capped. Like, we had it with Billy Gilmore. We both. Well, I was a bit more vocal on the Billy Gilmore thing, but like David Turnbull should 100% be in this squad ahead of Kenny McLean, in my opinion. Of course, he should. Like,
how many times did Kenny McLean play in that Premier League season now?
I think he played quite a lot, but his team got relegated and he didn't do an awful lot. So
did he play quite a lot? I feel like I've never seen him in the team.
No, I think he did play quite a bit. But like, for someone like David Turnbull, who's played really well this season, yes, he should be playing, I think, instead of Kenny McLean. Kenny McLean is never, let me tell you, never going to be a first choice centre midfielder for Scotland. Agreed?
Who, Kenny McLean?
Yeah. No, he's never going to be a Scotland first choice. David Turnbull might. David Turnbull might be the best. He might be the best Scottish player for the next 10 years. You never know.
37 times he played last season. I never knew that. I honestly feel like I never.
His team got relegated. But anyway.
I probably just never watched Norwich. That was probably the case.
Yeah. So I think we should be giving more young players a chance at senior level.
I think so as well. I'd rather see Lewis Ferguson up there than Kenny McLean.
Yeah, another one. Yeah. So you look at, actually, incidentally, I was looking at the 21 squad. See a midfield three of Ferguson, McCrory and Turnbull.
That's good enough to start for Scotland. That's better than everything. No, nothing tops McGinn, McTominay, Armstrong, McGregor.
Jack Patterson asks, should Dykes start?
I suppose now he does, doesn't he?
Yeah, he should do.
Like,
did you hear his press conference?
No, I did not know.
He was very, very much of the I'm here to play for Scotland, I want to play for Scotland.
I seen the quote saying something like he's in debt to Scotland or something like that.
I mean, listen, we've criticised some of the English boys that play for Scotland for not being committed enough. Scott McTominay's another one who did an interview this week. Sounds like a great lad, great attitude, keen to play for Scotland. Give these boys a chance. If they want to be here, especially Dykes, when there's no other strikers in the squad, let him play. He's got to play for me. I think I'm looking forward to seeing how he does. Where else are we? So Glasgow Rebel, I think a friend of your channel.
Big man.
From the whispers going around, young Dembele seems to be banging the door to leave the club. Do you think Lennon should cave in and play him more, or let him go?
I wouldn't let him go. I think
is there rumours that he's wanting to leave?
I've seen people tweet me and comment my videos, but I have not passed anything like that. I think we've got to take all these things with a pinch of salt. I don't see why that would be true. There's no chance for me that a wee 17-year-old boy is like forcing his way onto the starting 11. There can't be. He'll surely. I think he looks happy. I think he's buzzing at the prospect of getting into that first team. I don't see why he'd want away just now. Because what's going to happen, right? Is he going to get a move to England and be in their first teams? No, let's be brutally honest. It's not going to happen. You've seen teams like Germany, like Dortmund, who have done a fantastic job at taking Sancho in. They've took now Jude Bellingham, and they've given these guys a chance. These guys are probably years ahead in development. Carlo Dembele is still the height of shite. He's not going to walk into a Dortmund side in Germany and get bullied by German defenders. I think we should take it with a pinch of salt. I don't think it's the case, but I will say that Lennon should give him a few minutes this season. Not a few. Yeah. That sounds like 5 minutes.
Give him a few last season. Right. Who's your Scotland midfield three? Jordan Carlin asks us.
Well, last week I changed at the last minute and I dropped McGregor and I went for Armstrong, McGinn and McTominay.
Yeah, I would agree.
Same three.
The only thing with that is that slightly worries me is that they're not, McGregor and Jack are both playing just now. So whether he goes for one of those two, I'm not sure. But yeah, I think when everyone's fit, that's our three. You look. Actually, I forgot to mention Armstrong when I was talking about the players doing really well down south. What a player he's been for Southampton! Like he's been the key to their form, some would say.
I mean, Danny Ings has of course took the spotlight at Southampton.
He has been sublime for Southampton.
Amazing, but Armstrong has been the maestro behind it all.
I think again, McTominay and Armstrong is a nice balance there. I would like to see that as a three. I'm not convinced we'll see that this weekend, but that would be my fully strength three. Incidentally, someone's asked for what is our preferred 11 for the Israel game. So we did this months ago. It was one of the first.
You better hurry this up, son. I've got editing to do. You better run through your 11, boy.
So we did this month ago. We did this month ago. This video, our preferred 11, and we both picked them. We'll have to redo that video, I think, before next.
Aye, you know, actually, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. I like that.
And then coronavirus hit.
That's right. Aye, I like it.
So we'll do that as a video, and that's pretty much us.
That's it. Well, what a show. What a show for the 1st of September, the 9th month we've been going.
It's the 2nd of September. This is twice now, man.
I don't. No, like, you've done this the first time as well, and I was like, what's he talking about? I mean the first podcast of September.
Oh,
you numpty.
I'm not a numpty, you're saying the 1st of September. It's the 2nd of September.
No, but what I mean is the first podcast. I can see the date, David. It's on my computer screen right there in front of me. I'm quite aware. Okay.
Maybe people think we did this yesterday.
I'll rephrase. The first podcast of September. Is that better?
Yeah, okay.
Aye, good. Anyway,
before we go, someone spotted my Twitter feed. No context, Ryan118. I've just absolutely slagged you in a tweet saying that you ruined the cheese slice patter. Any responses to that? We'll see you all next time. Cheers.